Apple versus Samsung, which ecosystem is actually better? It's a very dangerous question to try and answer, and I found that most of the people trying to answer it only really live on one side. And look, I'm a Samsung boy. My phone, my watch, my TV, my earbuds, even my washing machine talks to my phone. I started this channel with a Note 10 Plus. Hands up in the comments who had one of them. But the machine I run my entire business on is a MacBook Pro, and I've been wearing the Apple Watch Ultra 3 periodically for the best part of a year now, and I've absolutely loved it. So when I see comparison videos built on cherry-picked features, half-done research, and claims that are just outright false, I mean, it drives me absolutely insane. So today I'm going to be answering the question from the perspective of someone who genuinely uses and respects both sides, but not before I cover the 8 Samsung features that seem to get completely missed from these types of videos. And number 8 is Phone Link and Samsung Flow. Now, Apple's iPhone mirroring is cleaner. Controlling your phone from your Mac feels incredibly polished, and Apple does get the point for simplicity here, but Apple's version is cleaner has somehow turned into Samsung doesn't have an answer, and that's just outright false. On Windows, Phone Link and Flow gives you messages, notifications, calls, file transfers, shared copy and paste, and your actual phone screen. And no, contrary to popular belief, you do not need a Galaxy Book to get this feature working. It works on any Windows 10 or 11 PC. Again, Apple does win on polish, but Samsung wins on flexibility. You don't need to have the same logo on your laptop lid to get this feature working. Number 7, if you're a hardcore Apple fan, you might be wanting to say to me, well, look, Alex, Samsung might have those 2 features, but they're nowhere near as polished as Apple. And you know what, on the screen mirroring front, I'll give you that one. But I'd love to see it compete with Samsung DeX. Samsung DeX is not phone mirroring, it's literally a desktop that fits in your pocket, and to be honest, I can completely see why Samsung haven't invested as much time in their screen mirroring features when they've got Samsung DeX. When you realize you can connect a compatible Galaxy phone to a monitor and get resizable windows, proper file management, keyboard and mouse support, and your phone can even become a touchpad, I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing. Apple does of course have its own sort of solution to this, and that of course is Stage Manager, which is decent, but in my opinion doesn't even come close. To get the most out of that, you kind of need to go off and buy an M series iPad. DeX runs on the phone that is already in your pocket. It will not replace a laptop for everyone, and I made that abundantly clear in my Samsung DeX video, but for travel, emergency work, or simply using a bigger screen, it is one of the most useful ecosystem features that either company makes. And number 6 is QuickShare. This is the Samsung equivalent of Apple's AirDrop. It already shared files between Galaxy devices, Android phones, and supported Windows PCs, but on the 26 series, it can now send directly to AirDrop too. That means that my Samsung phone can now send directly to an iPhone, an iPad, and more crucially for me, my MacBook. Apple built one of the best file sharing systems in the whole industry, but Samsung are now knocking those walls down, and it's worth remembering who was the one to make that move. Now, number 5 in a similar fashion is Storage Share, exactly the kind of feature that Samsung is terrible at explaining, but it does exist and it is actually pretty good. On supported devices signed into the same Samsung account, your phone or tablet storage can appear inside My Files on another Galaxy device or compatible PC. You can even use this feature on a Samsung TV. It is one of the few features that rewards you for being in the Samsung ecosystem. The 4th feature that's constantly glossed over in these types of videos is Camera Share. This is Samsung's answer to Apple's continuity camera. Basically, it means that compatible Galaxy smartphones can now act as higher quality webcams for supported Galaxy tablets and Galaxy Books, making use of the far better camera setup on your phone. So it's not so much Samsung lacking the technology, it's more them kind of fumbling the marketing and potentially not executing it with quite as much grace as Apple. And number 3 is a very similar scenario. It's Smart View, and more specifically AppCast. Normal Smart View just mirrors your phone to a TV, nothing special, but AppCast is the really clever bit. On supported devices, you can send one app to the TV whilst keeping the rest of your phone private and usable. So you can put a film or a video on the big screen, then reply to a message or check an email without broadcasting your entire phone. The caveat, of course, being this is one of those annoying Samsung features that tends to be region locked, so if you can't find this feature, it's likely not available in your country. Number 2 is something that I can categorically say is far superior on Samsung. is modes and routines, and as a bonus, alarm syncing. Apple, of course, has its focus modes and its shortcuts, but Samsung have taken that and really juiced it up. The things that you can do with modes and routines if you put the time into it, I mean, is truly amazing. On top of that, you've of course got alarm syncing as well, which quite frankly is surprising that Apple doesn't have this feature. But basically, if you set an alarm on your watch, it'll carry over to your phone completely seamlessly. This is a sort of frictionless behavior that people have kind of come to expect from Apple rather than Samsung. Anyway, number one is where Samsung starts to feel like a proper ecosystem for me. It's Samsung Find. Samsung Find, much like Apple's Find My Network, can locate your Galaxy phone, your tablet, your watch, your earbuds, and your smart tags. So the feature is there and it exists, but I'm definitely not going to pretend that Samsung does it better than Apple. Samsung's Find is quite restrictive by Samsung standards. Currently, Galaxy watches work with most modern Android phones, but Samsung Find remains a Samsung phone feature. So Apple wins on tracking, but Samsung really balances the scales when you look at the whole ecosystem behind my TV, my washing machine, and pretty much every other connected device in my home. It's SmartThings. When we talk about ecosystem comparisons, we tend to immediately think about the devices in our pockets, but ecosystems stretch far beyond that now into smart home technology. So when it comes to Apple HomeKit versus SmartThings, I mean, it's not even close for me. That being said, we've got to be fair. There are several reasons why I think Apple's HomeKit is actually better than Samsung's SmartThings, and the first is local processing. Apple HomeKit does most of its processing locally, meaning you get slightly faster responses and all of your data is kept private. Out of the box, Samsung SmartThings is still quite reliant on the cloud. It's got better, but it's still not quite at the level of HomeKit. The second reason that I pick Apple HomeKit, I mean, actually, I don't have a second reason. For me, a good smart home platform needs breadth, and Samsung provides that. Apple's ecosystem lock-in just doesn't work here. SmartThings supports a huge amount of third-party lights, plugs, sensors, locks, and Matter devices. It works on Android and iPhone. Apple's Home app just doesn't exist on Android. And Samsung itself makes monitors, fridges, robot vacuums, and various other kitchen appliances. If your ecosystem ends at your desk, then fair enough, Apple might be the one to go for. If it includes the rest of your home, Samsung has the most complete answer here. Apple's HomeKit is prettier, but Samsung SmartThings is messier, broader, and I'm sorry, just way cooler. So for me, Samsung comfortably wins in the home section, but what's arguably more important for people is the things that you're carrying every single day: your phone, your watch, your earbuds, things that are fitting in your pocket. And I want to start off by talking about phones. I'm not going to do another camera spec war. In an ecosystem, the phone is the anchor. It decides which watch you properly use, which features your earbuds unlock, and how tightly the other products attach themselves to your life. I carry the S26 Ultra by choice. I spent a lot of time with the iPhone. Both are brilliant anchors and generally brilliant phones. And you're going to start noticing a theme when we're comparing Apple to Samsung. For me, my experience with the iPhone was brilliant. It was one of the most polished, fluid experiences that I've ever had on any phone. It's really difficult to match Apple software. But the S26 Ultra and even the S25 and the Z Folds before that have given me an experience that makes me feel more free, gives me more options, more customization. Arguably slightly rough around the edges, but I like that. But when it comes to which ecosystem does the better phone, there just isn't a right answer. The iPhone is brilliant. The Galaxy series is brilliant. Both of them have their merits. Both of them have things that the other doesn't. And to be honest, both brands are just leapfrogging over each other in terms of features year on year. It's almost pointless to compare them. It is a draw. The only reason that I picked the S26 Ultra over the iPhone by choice is the S Pen. As a business owner, it's a tiny quality of life thing that really helps me get moving throughout the day when I have to sign contracts on the go. But it's not something that I'm going to go ahead and say that makes Samsung better than Apple. The key difference that I found with Samsung phones and Apple's phones is that the iPhone definitely locks you into the devices around you more, and Samsung is much more free. But I'll leave you to decide whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But when we go on to smartwatches, I'm almost certain that it's a bad thing. For me, the most important fact when comparing ecosystems is to set up the Apple Watch Ultra 3, you need an iPhone. If you don't have an iPhone, you can't use it. The Galaxy Watch equally will not work with an iPhone, but it'll work with pretty much any other Android device out there. Granted, there are going to be some features that are locked behind Samsung's own wall, but it's nothing in comparison to Apple. And when flagship smartwatches like the Apple Watch Ultra 3 are fast approaching the same price as flagship smartphones, I mean, before we even get to comparing the features of these smartwatches, do you really want to be in an ecosystem that if you leave it, your $800, $900 purchase becomes a paperweight. For me, Samsung has built a preference and Apple has built a padlock. That being said, I absolutely love the Apple Watch Ultra 3. I think it's a great smartwatch and it honestly stings me every time I have to put it away. Its charging speeds embarrass Samsung, roughly 0 to 80% in 45 minutes, while my Galaxy Watch takes the best part of 2 hours. The haptics on the Ultra 3 are way better, the animations are more fluid, and the software, honestly, it feels like a tiny considered iPhone on my wrist. It really is that good. It's got that premium Apple aesthetic that Samsung really struggles to get close to with a lot of its devices. The thing is, smartwatches are not just about being flashy. That is only one side of it. You want a smartwatch for tracking your health, and in my opinion, Samsung does that way better than the Apple Watch Ultra 3. It's got things like your body composition, vascular load, ages data, blood pressure monitoring in supported regions after calibration, and then on top of that, you get all of your advanced running metrics, which you also get on the Apple Watch Ultra 3. The Apple Watch Ultra 3 does have its own useful features like hypertension alerts and satellite connectivity, but in my opinion, they're far more niche and less useful day to day than things like body composition analysis. Apple does such a good job of presenting health beautifully, and it is excellent at warning you when something may need attention. Samsung gives me more of the body and training data that I'm actually going to use day to day, and that data over the years has helped me go from barely being able to finish a 5K run, from just going out the door whenever I want and completing a half marathon in less than 2 hours. The boring truth of these smartwatches is that you generally buy the smartwatch that matches your phone, but Samsung doesn't necessarily force you to do that. And if both watches did fully work on both phones, I'd still pick the Galaxy Watch. The Apple Watch is far more polished, but the Galaxy Watch is way more useful. Now, on the smartwatch front, it's arguably pretty close. I wouldn't get upset if anyone wants to argue that the Apple Watch Ultra 3 is better than the Galaxy Watch Ultra. That's fine, but overall, as an ecosystem, there is one reason that I think Samsung does surpass Apple, and that is this: the Galaxy Fit 3. Apple just doesn't have an answer to it. To get a budget fitness tracker from Apple, you need to spend around $250 on the special edition Apple Watch. With the Galaxy Fit 3, you're getting your notifications, sleep tracking, heart rate, more than 100 workout modes, battery measured in days rather than hours, and all of this activity and data feeds into the very same app as your Galaxy Watch Ultra does, Samsung Health. Now, of course, with a device like this, you don't get every advanced sensor or metric, but you do get a surprising amount of everyday ecosystem for a device that's often priced around $45. I love my Galaxy Watch Ultra, but I think Samsung's best wearable might actually be the Galaxy Fit 3, and Apple currently doesn't offer anything remotely sensible in comparison. The Galaxy Fit 3 for me is proof that Samsung can offer more than one sensible entry point into its ecosystem. And then of course we get onto earbuds. Now, I've been living in the Galaxy Buds recently, specifically the new Galaxy Bud 4 Pros. Absolutely love them. There's a few things that need improving, but overall they're actually really great and definitely Samsung's best earphones yet. But there are still several things that I think that the AirPods do much better than the Galaxy Bud 4 Pros. And the first is something that is across the board for Apple, and that is their tracking. It is much easier to find your AirPods if you lose them than it is your Galaxy Buds. It's honestly such a pain if you lose these around the house. You can never find the exact location. And secondly, the AirPods do have a slight edge in noise cancellation, but the crucial differentiator here for me is that it's only in specific scenarios. If I'm walking alongside a busy road, for example, I can't really see the difference between the AirPods and the Galaxy Buds. But when I'm sat in a cafe, the AirPods definitely seem to block out a little bit more of that general hustle and bustle. But just because that I think the AirPods do a lot of things really well doesn't mean that they're necessarily better than the Galaxy Bud 4 Pros. I think the Galaxy Bud 4 Pros are superior in sound quality, and that is actually down to the hardware as well as the codec. And weirdly, I do think with the latest One UI 8.5 or the One UI 9 beta, if you've got it, I actually think the Galaxy Bud 4 Pros give more of a seamless feeling with your phone than you get with AirPods, which is a really strange observation to make because usually that's the sort of thing that Apple does better than Samsung. So on the ears front, I think both ecosystems do it very well in their own way. Cross compatibility is pretty much the same for both of them in both ecosystems, and they're arguably the easiest part of any ecosystem to actually replace. Samsung have definitely got the edge when it comes to smartwatches and fitness trackers. They've got way more choice and, in my opinion, better data. But there is one category left that Samsung just completely loses me on. The machine that I run my entire business off is a MacBook Pro. I make primarily Samsung content, as you can see, but every single second of that is edited off a MacBook. I also own a custom RTX 3090, which for me has highlighted just how powerful the M4 Pro is. Since getting my M4 Pro, I'm honestly just using it for hobbies and a little bit of gaming every now and then. The M4 Pro is such a powerful machine that really has no competitors at the moment. When I'm working in Premiere, the timelines are staying responsive. I can edit for 4 to 6 hours on battery. The fans are barely noticeable, and the battery health still, after a year of abuse, was 97%. Beyond that, why am I still using a MacBook? Why haven't I gone out and bought a Galaxy Book? I mean, the answer is extremely simple. The Galaxy Book cannot compete with the power of a MacBook at the moment. But on top of that, the MacBook Pro is the one device in Apple's ecosystem that I feel I don't need to have the phone, I don't need to have the watch, I can use it on its own. And actually Samsung have really helped make that easier by recently cracking Apple's AirDrop. Now I can send things from my phone to my laptop without having to plug things in. It's really simple. This way I can own Apple's best hardware while keeping my Samsung phone, the Galaxy Watch, and whatever earbuds I fancy. It's a great example of the hardware carrying the relationship, not the ecosystem, which is kind of how it should be. And that's not the only thing it does better. I have arguably spent most of this video waving Samsung's flag, and that does genuinely reflect my opinions, but there are 5 things that I think Apple does do better than Samsung. And first, this video, Samsung gives you excellent stabilization, long-range zoom, 8K recording, manual controls, and on the S26 Ultra, the very impressive new APV codec. But if I'm going out intentionally to film something high quality, I trust the iPhone more. The latest iPhone supports ProRes RAW, Apple Log 2, and Genlock with Final Cut camera feeding directly into Final Cut on Mac and iPad. Samsung can produce absolutely incredible video, but Apple, in my opinion, has built the more complete professional pipeline, and do still prefer Apple's RAW video over Samsung when I'm comparing pixel by pixel. The second thing that Apple does really well, and the one thing I genuinely missed from my time with the iPhone, is proper face unlock. Samsung's ultrasonic fingerprint scanner is brilliant, but its face recognition is not the same as Face ID. Samsung itself even warns that face recognition is less secure than a pin, pattern, or fingerprint. On the iPhone, Face ID uses dedicated, more secure depth sensing hardware and can securely authorize payments, passwords, and supported apps. Samsung has a very good alternative in the fingerprint scanner and does have their own face unlock. It just doesn't work nearly as well as on the iPhone. The third thing that Apple does much better, in my opinion, is update delivery. Again, Samsung are improving, but they're not quite on Apple's level yet. Samsung now offers up to 7 years of software support for their flagship devices, so longevity is no longer something that Apple wins on, but delivery still is. When Apple does release a major iOS update, supported iPhones get it all together. Samsung rolls new One UI versions out gradually by model, country, and sometimes even network. One UI 8.5, for example, started on the new S26 series and then gradually has been rolling out to older devices. Samsung has caught up with Apple in how long a device can support those updates, but it's not caught Apple in the delivery. The fourth thing that Apple does better than Samsung hits several points, and it's software, but not just how the phone runs, it's also the software that you get for free with things like a MacBook. Every Mac can download iMovie and GarageBand for free. It's fair to say that professionals are not going to be editing feature films in iMovie, but it's a genuinely great alternative for beginners. In addition, on the software front, every single Samsung phone that I get comes with tons of bloatware. You just don't get that same experience on an iPhone. Number 5 is hearing health. This is something that is starting to creep into Samsung. We've seen on the new Galaxy Watch Ultra 2 software that this is going to be a feature coming to the new smartwatches, but it's something that Samsung hasn't had for a while. And beyond smartwatches, compatible AirPod Pros can now run a validated hearing test, function as a clinical grade hearing aid for mild to moderate hearing loss, and reduce exposure to dangerously loud environments. Now, I'm not sure how often I use the last one, but the first one sounds really intriguing. Samsung does offer ambient amplification and accessibility controls, which are genuinely good and worth taking a look at, but not an equivalent end-to-end hearing health system. It's not something to ignore on Apple's devices. It's gone beyond a gimmicky feature, and it's genuinely making a difference to people's lives. So which ecosystem is better overall? is Samsung, obviously. And I say that with confidence. From a completely analytical standpoint, Samsung is the better, safer choice for many. Not because it wins on every single category, it clearly doesn't, but because it gives me the better overall deal. It's broader, it reaches further into your home, it offers more price points, works with more third-party hardware, and even when Samsung tries to lock you in, the door is usually easier to find. But there is one reason that I think Apple is actually much better than Samsung and would actually be the more valid pick, and that's the ecosystem lock-in. And I know that I've gone on about this throughout the whole video as if it's the worst thing ever, but also it's Apple's biggest strength. No set of devices works as seamlessly between each other as the ones that Apple provides. And when you're in Apple's walled garden, I mean, it feels safe, it looks pretty, it's a great place to be. And at the end of the day, being stuck in that ecosystem might not be the worst thing ever. For me, Apple's pretty walled garden feels much more like a prison, and that's why I pick Samsung over Apple every single time, apart from the computer. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think, which ecosystem is best in your eyes and why. And just to prove that I'm not completely biased towards Samsung, do check out my latest review on the Apple Watch Ultra 3 in the top corner now. See you over there.